Hey, it's Ron McLean. Welcome to Hockey Talk on the Rock.
With Laura and Keith.
It's interesting.
So let's back up a second.
He played absolutely out of his mind.
It made no sense to me.
And now, here are your hosts.
All right, here we go. We are back doing Hockey Talk on the Rock number 68. It is March 21st. It is trade deadline day. There was stuff that happened all weekend, not just today, but a lot of stuff happened today. So we're going to talk about some winners and losers from the trade deadline, but we'll first recap the not so great week since we last talked for the Canucks, and as well as some trades they made.
Yeah, so the Canucks, they, came home to a 6-game road homestand. Sorry, not road stand. And I was thinking, realistically, for them to have a shot at the playoffs, they were going to need 4 of 6, if not 5 of 6, just because of how much harder their schedule gets post-deadline. Unfortunately, the Canucks did not do well.
No. I mean, yeah, we talked right before the New Jersey game. Yeah. They got a big, exciting win.
Yeah.
And then they laid an egg against Detroit.
Yeah.
Didn't show up against Calgary.
And then
didn't show up against Buffalo.
And I don't know, the combination of things that's happening, I do think part of it might be because they played basically so hard to get back into the conversation, and now they just don't have any gas left. But the kind of way that I'll think that maybe that's not the case is that this team has shown trends kind of throughout the year that they're not that good a team, even though they have been playing a lot better. And these things have now crept back into their game. And I just feel like they've gone as far as they're going to go kind of thing with this group, to be honest. So it sucks that it happened right before the deadline, but maybe it's a bit better than me getting my hopes up and then them completely falling apart post-deadline, which is kind of a Canucks tradition in recent-ish years. Most notably for me is 2020, actually, when they paused the season, because I know they did make the playoffs that year, but it wasn't. They weren't going to, right?
Yeah.
So it's frustrating, and it'll be very interesting to see what they do in the off season, because the moves that they made, which we'll talk about in a second here, are all pretty not minor, but we can start with the fact that they did trade Tyler Mott, which I was happy that they traded Tyler Mott, because you couldn't re-sign him for over $2 million. I love him as a player, but it's just not worth it to this team at that price tag. And then they essentially changed Hamnick into Dermott, who is younger and cheaper. So again, I like the move, but the big decisions they have to make about the core of this group have been pushed to the summer, which in some ways is disappointing because of the prices that people were paying today to get rentals and players with term. But all I can say is I just hope there's going to be more teams that'll be in on those players in the summer, and so the price is still high. But yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, since Boudreau took over, kind of backing up a little bit, they are a playoff team in terms of their points percentage, but the worst trend is they don't come out to play for a lot. The majority of the games, I would say that they lost because they didn't come out to play, or they found themselves behind and they had to drag themselves back into the fight for the game, which, as you alluded to, is exhausting and could be why we're seeing such a fall off now.
Yeah.
One thing I kind of noticed, because Demko kind of stole most of the season for them, is he's been a bit average, and it's probably they've been talking about his workload, but I've noticed that there's trending towards 5-hole goals.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you noticed that, but I've noticed that he's been letting a lot of 5-hole goals in.
I noticed in the Calgary game they were all blocker.
Were they?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed the overtime loss when we were in Washington, and then same with Buffalo, and then the Detroit goal was kind of fluky because it was a pass off, but
right.
I don't know. It's just something I kind of noticed.
And again, that probably is just mentally exhausted kind of thing.
Yeah.
You're not totally in the game, and a disappointment of the deadline was they couldn't move Halak, but not totally surprised just given the situation with Halak, though it sounded like he was willing to waive, but again, just finding someone that wanted to take him on after this season.
And there was only 2 goalies that were moved, and they were kind of better goalies.
Yeah.
So back to the trades. Hamonic did go to Ottawa, and they reacquired reacquired their own third rounder
Yeah, I like
for
that.
this coming draft. And Hamnick is 31 years old, 1 more year at $3 million.
Yep.
And then they traded Winnipeg's third rounder that they got for Nate Schmidt to Toronto for Travis Dermott, who's 25 years old and $1.5 million on the cap. So they cut the cost in half for a D-man. They got 6 years younger on a D-man. Listening to one of the guys from Toronto come on the radio today, he was talking about how fast Dermott is, and that's one thing they've been talking about on their defense is how slow they all are.
Yeah.
So
it's very noticeable the last 3 games.
Yeah, I mean it's exciting to save that money and like take kind of a flyer on a guy that.
I think it was a smart move. At first, when I saw that they gave up the third for Dermott after immediately acquiring a third, I wasn't crazy about it because I was like, oh, the Canucks are finally getting picks. But again, when you think about it essentially as like a Dermott for Hamnick swap, I realize they're not the same pick, but it's basically what they did.
Yeah.
I think it was smart. It was a smart move. It was a cap move. And I like that for them. So.
And there is a small interesting caveat to this in them reacquiring their own third and then not trading their own third. Is it leaves them open to offer sheet somebody, which I don't know how I feel about, but I guess that's something.
Yeah, it's there.
As as long as it's not like a Kotkaniemi type guy.
Yeah.
And then the other trade, the third and final Vancouver trade was, which you talked about. Vancouver traded Tyler Mott, who's their only upcoming UFA other than Halak, to the Rangers for a fourth rounder in 2023. And you look at the day and the fourth line wingers or fourth line forwards, and that was kind of the market. So. I know in our market, and you and I definitely thought he was going to get more than that, but it turns out it just wasn't that type of market.
And I will say this, like I think Vancouver in general, but every market is like this where you overvalue your own players.
Yeah.
And so again, like you see Tyler Mott and what he does on a daily basis, and he does bring the intangibles to a team, and I thought they'd get a higher pick, but I'm happy they got something. I'm happy they didn't just leave it because, again, I'm kind of haunted by that. But, yeah, the Rangers got a good player in Tyler Mott. So.
For sure. Yeah, he'll be a good depth player. I mean, there's two things I'll put out there with Tyler Mott as. I mean, like, he's at his career high with 16 points.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
It's only 16 points. But he's a hardworking player.
Yeah.
And
any penalty kills.
And any penalty kills. And then I think it was Frank Saravelli was on the radio at the end of the day there, and he's like, well, how do you think you can get more when everyone's looking at Vancouver's cap situation going, really, you're gonna keep him and give him a raise and sign him? Like,
exactly.
I don't think anyone saw that as a realistic thing, especially with the message that the management has been touting.
Yeah.
So there you have it. That's kind of the Canucks.
The Canucks.
They did some stuff. They saved a bit of money. They moved out a player and got something for him rather than letting him walk. And like you said, in the summer, there's probably going to be some heavy lifting and some big moves. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Overall, for the Canucks, I would say it was anticlimactic, but it wasn't necessarily bad. That's kind of how I view it. It's
for sure.
Just like it was meh.
And I'm gonna keep watching. Like, early in the season, it was bad.
Yeah.
So in the Boudreau era, leading through the end of the year, I'm gonna keep watching because it's been exciting. And
it's been exciting, and you don't know. I'd say it's very unlikely they make the playoffs, but there's something there, and someone has to take that spot. I mean, again, going back to the little bit of the wild card stuff, I know you want to get into the trades, but Vegas obviously got those 2 wins that were big for them, so right now they're still in that spot, but they've played, I think, more games than anyone. I know they've definitely played more games than Dallas, but I think they've also played more games than Winnipeg and Vancouver, which are really the teams that would be on that spot.
Yeah.
The thing about Vegas that I think is interesting is now, because they have so many injuries, maybe they can go back into that mentality that they had in their first year, everyone's kind of counting us out, and so we're gonna show up and we're gonna outwork you. And because they don't have a goalie and stuff, I think maybe that is an easy play with that group, especially that second line, the guys who've been there for a long time, and being like, okay guys, show us what you got again.
Yeah.
But I do think they're vulnerable, so it's interesting. But
we'll see.
we'll
Considering
see.
they only have 4 of those guys that were there for that
Yeah, I
mentality
know.
run, but yeah, I don't know. I
mean,
still
they're
see
playing
them falling out.
Pouliot and Hutton on defense. Like,
Yeah,
there's a weakness there, but I don't know who I'd pick of that group, like, fighting for the spot, who would make it.
yeah, and I
So-
mean, if they had a better backup goalie,
Yeah.
like the Leonard being out is
It's
really gonna.
hurt them.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really gonna hurt them. So I almost now believe that like I can see Winnipeg making a good run. They've been playing
Yeah.
well lately.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
It's kind of wide open, unlike
Yeah.
the other side.
Oh yeah, the other side's totally, completely shut.
So
But anyway, let's move on to the other trades.
yeah, let's talk some trades. Like I've got some winners, some honorable mentions, and some losers, and I mean there's some big trades that I don't have on here. We can talk
Yeah,
about
sure.
too. But do you have anything of the sort, or you just want to build off what I got, or what do you think?
Just build off what you have. Do you want to start with talking about your boy?
Well, yeah, Florida's in my
Okay,
winners.
okay.
Florida's in my winners, so I'll start with Florida. Yeah, I had to give them as a trade deadline winner because they're already a top team in the NHL, if not the top team. I haven't looked in the league standings in a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's either them or Colorado.
That's what I
They're
thought.
up
One
there,
of the two. So they're already loaded with offense. Like we've talked about how entertaining their forwards are. They score a
Yeah.
lot of goals, and now they added Giroux. I'm totally excited for that. I'm wearing a Florida jersey. I'm gonna be on the bandwagon here because I'd love to see him lift the cup. Secretly, kind of hoping for a '96 finals rematch
Oh yeah.
with Colorado.
That would be pretty sweet.
I think it would be fun.
Yeah, it would be a lot of goals.
It
for
would be
sure.
a lot of goals. So then they add Sherratt and they add Hag on D. Like Sherratt, obviously, like a top 4. Hag, more of like a 6-7.
And they'll get Ekblad back in the playoffs.
They'll get Ekblad back, and you need D in the
Yeah.
playoffs. So, I'm a believer. I think they can win the cup, as long as Bobrovsky does his job.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. So
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this about Florida. Like, that division is insane, right? Like, with Florida, Tampa, and Toronto is your top 3.
Yeah.
And then you look at Boston and the wild card right now, and they're all good teams. I still think Tampa probably, to me, has the best team in that division. I know they're not atop the division, but the thing about Tampa is like they have Vasilevsky, right?
Yeah.
But the way that you can beat Vasilevsky is by having as good an offense as you possibly have, and I think that's what Florida has done.
yeah,
So I really, really, really want another Battle of Florida.
oh man,
That's
me
like
too.
all I want in the playoffs. If that happens in the second round, I'll be so stoked because I think it's gonna be just unreal for hockey.
Mhm.
And I agree with you. I think that Florida did, like, they positioned themselves to go all in. They don't have a first round pick now until 2025.
Yeah.
Like they're in. So we'll see what happens. I personally think there's kind of 3 teams that could win the cup this year, and it would be Tampa, Florida, and Colorado.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see what happens.
We
But
will
I'm
see what
excited
happens.
for the Eastern playoffs in general. But
So yeah, I had 2 winners who like added, and then
Okay.
I had 1 winner who like sold really well. So
Okay.
I'll move on to the other winner for who added, and I picked Minnesota.
yeah,
Mainly because like obviously we've talked about recently how they've been slipping, and it's kind of the goalies.
yeah,
You know, Talbot and Kakinen have been letting in like 4+
Yeah.
goals a game for like a month and a
Yeah.
half. So they did get Fleury, best goalie available,
yeah,
for a second. If they go far, turns out to be a first.
Yep.
But they need to do it. Like we've talked about the cap hell they're going to be
They
in for the
have
next
to.
3 years, so they had to do it. They got Delorier from Anaheim for
Yep.
a third, and then they got Middleton from San Jose for
Yep.
Kakinen, who I guess they've just lost all faith in.
yeah,
So I already thought that their roster is like built for the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like they're big. They've got
Yeah.
2 like Selke type centermen, and then they added 2 big guys in Delorier and Middleton. They've got a guy who's played really good playoff hockey in net now.
yeah.
Like I don't know. I thought they did well to do what they could, and they also traded away Victor Rask for
Yeah.
I don't know, something to Seattle, but save some cap
Save
room, I
some
guess.
cap. Yeah, I agree. Again, I think Minnesota has done very well, and they were my sleeper pick in the West at the beginning of the year.
Yep.
I thought they've done well in the last year of building this team, specifically. I mean, the last 2 years, I guess. So
Mhm.
I like their moves. I think Fleury needed to be done. They needed to address goaltending in some way, just because of their situation. I mean, like Edmonton and Toronto, which would be the other places that to me really needed goalies. You could argue that they can wait till the off season. You know, if something doesn't go right, they
Mhm.
can wait. many, I feel like they can't. They had to go all in, so it was smart. The other ads were, just tinkering with their roster there a little bit, but I think we'll see what the playoffs bring.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, in the playoffs, I fully believe they can beat anyone in the West not named Colorado.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's just a matter of when they meet up with Colorado, really.
Yeah.
And then my third winner was Anaheim because, man, like...
Yeah, they did well.
That is like the definition of you have UFAs coming up, get value for them. So I wrote it out real quick here. They traded out Lindholm, Raquel, Manson, Delorier, and 2 LTIR contracts.
Yeah.
And in return for that, they got 1 first, 5 second rounders, 1 third, Hellison, Vakanainen, Aston Reese, Simon, this Klang guy who's a goalie, and Evgeny Dadonov.
See, that just pains me as a Canucks fan when you read something like that, and I just think back over the years of what they could have done.
Oh, it's insane. I don't know. Like, this is insane. This is how UFA assets should be handled when you're coming up through a rebuild.
Yeah, and again, Anaheim could have looked and been like, oh, we're relatively close to the playoffs, we're going to make our push, but they embraced it. They said, no, we're getting assets, and I loved what Anaheim did today. I thought it was really, really smart.
Yeah, so normally when we do these winner-loser things, I always pick guys who are going for it, but I had to give Anaheim a win there.
The other team that I would throw in kind of in that mix a bit is Montreal for what they've done, like, since dealing Toffoli. I thought they've also done very well.
They're my honorable mention side thing here. Montreal for selling assets, right? Because they got a good return for Lehkonen, Sherrod,
and they
Toffoli.
have been playing better, too. So, again, it's like you're getting fans to kind of buy into this younger group with your Suzukis and your Caulfields, but you're able to, shed some money at the same time, and I think that is going to be very advantageous for them. And you never know what's going on with Carey Price for next year if he can come back. I mean, the only thing I would say about Montreal now is that their defense isn't very good, which was their strength before.
Yeah.
So, but I think they've done well at getting assets for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, they got that highly touted D prospect from Colorado, Justin Barron.
Yeah, I thought that was smart for them.
Yeah.
And everything that they sold, they got really good value.
Yeah,
for.
Even Brett Kulak, they got a pretty good return from Edmonton. I was pretty surprised. So honorable mention to Montreal was one I had. Seattle too. I just put for selling stuff. Like, they didn't capitalize on their expansion draft, but they definitely sold guys.
The thing that made me laugh about that is, like, when they started trading all these assets, like, back, like, again, like, Appleton back to Winnipeg, I forget, was it for a 4th?
Yeah.
And I was laughing about that because I'm like, in the summer you were asking a 1st and a 3rd or whatever to protect your asset, and now you're okay with a 4th.
Yeah.
So, like, they did well, but I don't know how well they actually did, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
They sold.
They got rid of players. That's what I'm saying. Like, they didn't get a whole bunch of picks and prospects at the expansion draft, but the first deadline they definitely did, because I think they've got 25 picks in the next 2 drafts. So I gave them honorable mention, and then I gave Chicago one too, mainly for the massive return they got for Brandon Hagel, which was insane.
That's insane.
Like, they got 2 first rounders and 2 what I thought were highly touted prospects in Boris Katchuk and Tyler Radish.
Yeah, and he scored last night too.
Radish did? Yeah, so Tampa Bay gave up a lot. I understand that Hagel's on 1.5 mil for the next 2 years, RFA after, so he's team controlled. Yeah. But that was a massive haul. And then they got a second for Fleury that could be a first. So Chicago did okay.
They did well, yeah. You have any other honorable mentions for buyers?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Do you?
I'm trying to think. I mean, again, like, I don't mind what Tampa did. I understand they gave up a lot, but I do think that third line now with Hagel and Paul is good.
Yeah.
Who else?
I mean, I had Colorado and I crossed them off.
Colorado,
because I liked that they got Manson and, like, Lehkonen. I thought was a real good pickup.
Yeah.
Cogliano.
They got some, like, again, some depth guys there. They didn't, I mean, they got, I guess, Josh Manson before. Yeah. But, like, they didn't make any big splash. But, no. I don't mind their moves. I mean, they've got, the thing about Colorado is they have their firepower, right? Like, it's not like they really need to add more. Yeah. Provided that no one gets hurt. And they didn't give up any of their, like, assets like Newhook or Byram. So.
So, I mean, there's a few teams that are, like, contenders that I've kind of put in like the mushy middle here that we can talk about, because there was some big trades that aren't in here.
Yeah.
But I'll quickly go to the losers.
Sure.
I put 5 down.
Yeah.
And I just put kind of one line to go with them. Toronto, I said they're losers for not adding or addressing the goaltending.
Yeah, I agree.
Buffalo, I said, because they're such a bad team, you'd think they would sell more assets, and all they did was trade Robert Hagg for a 6th.
I was going to say, did they do anything? I forgot that Hagg was even in Buffalo.
Yeah, so that was the only thing they did. I would have thought they would have sold more.
Something, yeah.
Columbus, similar thing. They're not going to be a playoff team, and all they did was get rid of Domi, and all they got back was Rischuk or whatever, which was weird. LA is the only team in a playoff spot that I put as a loser because they're in a playoff spot, and all they did was add Troy Stetcher and 2 other no-name prospect D.
Yeah.
And the Islanders I put on the loser list because they literally sold nobody. In fact, they went ahead and extended Clutterbuck and Parise, which I don't know. I mean, I guess they're calling it an anomaly year, and they see them bouncing back next year, but I couldn't believe they sold nobody.
That is pretty crazy.
So that's just my run through of the losers. I don't know if there's any other teams that jumped out to you as like probably should have done more.
I mean, I would kind of like Toronto. I'd say Edmonton, but they're a little bit less desperate right now with the goaltending.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anyone else I can think of?
Yeah, I think like
St. Louis do anything?
They got Letty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be the other team, like for me, that again.
Probably should have done more.
Probably should have done a little bit more.
Yeah, Edmonton too, I agree. Like, they got Brassard and they got Kulak, but I mean, same as Toronto, like, you kind of thought they were going to address the goaltending.
Yeah.
In that mushy middle, we can talk about Toronto getting Giordano and Blackwell. Like,
that was a good deal.
I think
them.
they got a good deal out of Seattle for that, only giving up, 2 seconds in the third.
Yeah.
And Blackwell was a better player in New York than he was in Seattle.
I could see him being a good depth guy in Toronto.
Totally. And then the other big trade, I guess, that we can quickly go over was Boston got Lindholm. I mean, I talked about Anaheim trading him, but they got him.
And that's another, to me, honestly, I found that trade a little bit interesting, too, because if I'm, like, a Boston fan, which I'm not, to me, Boston's problem is, like, secondary scoring. And I understand that Lindholm's a very good defenseman, but I just didn't see why they felt like that was the need over finding that someone who can help put the puck in the net.
Yeah, I don't know.
The interesting thing is they also extended DeBrusk, right? And so to me, it looked like they were going to move him with the extension, but I guess they're going to wait till the summer now to do that.
Right.
But I kind of thought that might be in play. But, I mean, Lindholm's a really good defenseman, and they locked him up long term. They gave up a lot to get him, but they knew that they were going to do that deal when they got him.
Yeah.
Because they were evidently like the runners up on Sherratt, and that's why they didn't get Sherratt, was they're like, we want to negotiate with him long term, and Montreal's like, no, we don't want that, we just want to sell.
Right.
So anyway, yeah.
So that was a big return for Anaheim, but I mean, we've already applauded Anaheim for what they've done.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, there was a lot of other trades, just kind of looking around the jerseys here, and, I mean, there was teams that did very little.
The other team that I think is interesting, too, a bit is Winnipeg, because they
I was going to bring up Winnipeg. They brought in a couple guys. Yeah. They brought in Sanford, and they brought back Appleton, but then they sold big on top.
Which,
smart.
Again, I think was smart for them, because you don't know. They're in that weird mushy middle right now in the standings, but it wasn't worth it. Like, if they were, first or second in their division, I would have said, keep them as your own rental and see how it goes. But I think they made the smart move to sell high on him, essentially, and see how it goes. And
yeah, I mean, and everyone else, I feel like, I'll get to one more that didn't make sense, but I feel like everyone else made sense, like Nashville made a little tweak here. Dallas made a little tweak there with like Nemestikov.
Yeah.
Teams that are like right there on that fringe of just being in or maybe getting in, made little tweaks and it made sense. Washington, I thought, would have been more active.
Yeah, Washington was quiet.
Because they got Marcus Johansson back.
Yeah.
And that was it. And from what I understood, they wanted to do something with their goaltending because they've like lost faith in Samsonov.
Yeah.
But yeah, being like cemented in that 8th spot in the East now too.
Yeah.
I would have thought they would have tried to do a little bit more to move out of it to not have to get destroyed by Florida in the first round. But
the thing that I read about like Washington today was like, I feel like everyone in the East, and I don't agree with this to this degree, but the writer was like, everyone in the East is a contender except for Washington.
Yeah.
And I was like, I do think there's levels, but to me they're clear, like, higher. There's a hierarchy of contenders in the East, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's odd they were so quiet, but especially because their core is getting up there, right? And if you look at what Pittsburgh did, in that they were also very, very quiet until after the deadline passed and they picked up Raquel.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was, like, I said it was a sneaky move for them, and that I think that one could pay out for Pittsburgh for sure, because they're the other team that, for me, I know they're higher up in the standings than Washington, but I still don't totally see them as being a contender.
Yeah.
But at least they tried to do something today.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like they felt like they had to.
Yeah.
Even though I don't think they wanted to bring on more contract problems at the end of the year, but, like, you know, with Rust, Malkin, and Letang all up at the end of the year, and now Raquel too, like, I feel like they felt like they owed it to the core to go for it one more time.
Yeah.
And they didn't give up a first.
No.
So, I don't know. Pittsburgh could surprise and win a round.
Yep.
Maybe two,
I
depending
could
on
see
how
if
the
it's
Metro
Pittsburgh,
falls.
New York, I could see Pittsburgh pulling that off. Again, depending on how Shesterkin plays and depending on how Jari plays.
Yeah.
Like, that's basically the series there, but...
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And to be honest, I'm not completely sold on Carolina. That would be the other team that we could talk about if you want.
Oh, yeah, because all they did was get Domi.
They added Domi and then they re-signed Kotkaniemi. And, like, I don't know, I watched them play the Saturday night game against Toronto this week, and it probably wasn't just, it could have been that it just wasn't a very good game for Carolina, but to me, there's something about that team that's still not there. And I know they're in first in that division, but I don't know if I'm sold on them for the playoffs. And also, like, Freddie Anderson in the playoffs doesn't have the greatest history.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's some stuff there about that team that I feel like they could have done a bit more today to kind of keep up with the arms race in the East. But yeah, it's gonna be wild though.
It's getting interesting, and the
Yeah.
playoffs are gonna be fun. I'm looking forward to it. It's kind of like you wish you're gonna hit the fast forward
Yeah.
button and let's just get there.
Yeah.
But like you say, things could change in the West in these next whatever it is 4 weeks. So
The other thing that I think would be really funny to happen in the playoffs, and this is jumping back to the West, would be if Vegas does make it in that 8th seed and they play Colorado in the first round. Because I don't think it's going to be, like, I think Colorado will destroy them, but I just think it would be funny, like, to have those storylines going into it and then have it in the first round. But anyway, I thought about that the other night, and I was like, wow, we could get some good first round hockey.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's too bad that we're not going to be able to see Fleury versus Vegas, because I just don't see that happen.
Amazing, but yeah.
I just don't see how that would work out.
Yeah.
All right.
But, yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, we said we weren't going to talk about all the trades. I think we talked about all the trades. There were so many, and it's always exciting. So it's just going to be fun now for the next few weeks watching
how
it all plays out, and, you know, what trades really worked out, and who's the contenders and who's the pretenders, as they say.
Yeah. And the Canucks now are going to head out on the road for a few games. And as mentioned, now the quality of competition goes up a bit. And we get a bunch of back-to-backs. So.
Yeah, what is it, 5 back-to-backs?
Yeah.
In the next 18 games.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how many starts Halak gets. Or if they're just going to ride Demko out to the end. But, yeah, we'll see how that all shapes up. And, yeah.
Go from there. All right. Well, I think we'll do this again next week. Have some more hockey to talk about. Obviously, no trades to talk about. And, that was Hockey Talk on the Rock, episode number 68. Thanks for listening. That's Laura. I'm Keith.
Woo!